the binary is important with the conversation around courting and dating, because women, and again, to reference Jordan Peterson, he makes the claim, which I'm in full agreement with, that we have a lot more to lose as females, because if we engage in sex and we have the risk of getting pregnant and having to hold life in our bodies for 9 months, that this abortion lie has been sold to us.
Yeah.
So, and this is a good segue back into courting and dating. So, and I would love to have that conversation too about the reason why females must be so much more skeptical and scrupulous and...
Good word.
Thank you. I never took the SATs.
Me neither. Hey.
And discriminating in our choice, in our life mate choice. Okay, so.
Which is so funny because biologically females are more agreeable.
Right. Unless you've been correct. Unless, and I agree.
On average.
No, how funny. I'm like, agreeable, and I agree. On average, no, you're right. You're absolutely right. And I would argue this point. That doesn't mean we have to be stupid in our mate choice.
True,
and our mate for life choice. Okay. So courting and dating. And in conversations with Jeff, like we would talk about this, like there's far less at risk for him than me in this whole dating world. And so, and also my parents were...
For so many reasons.
Right, for so many reasons. Of course, Jeff didn't live to 2024. And, yeah, off recording, there's I've talked about Jeff with you before. And so, I mean, in the Me Too movement, like, danger, lots of danger there. And sadly, I know, anyway, so... I'm heartbroken for today's men. I'll put it up. Oh my God. I mean, and the women too, for lots of reasons, but just the way in which, okay, but this is all important. This is all important in the courting dating context, because people will look at me when I say Tula will not be allowed to date. I cannot tell you the amount of shade I have received around that commentary, because individuals are like, basically the response is, we'll see. We'll see. When she gets to that dating age, we'll see. And I'm just like, yeah, we will. Yeah. Like, hold my beer. Watch me. Because I was allowed to date. And I know most folks are allowed to date, but it's not a big deal. I mean, most folks, it's not a big deal. And you know what? Good on you. That's fine. I just don't think that if you struggle with alcohol abuse or alcohol misuse or a temptation to overuse alcohol, that you should be a bartender or work in a bar. Yeah. That'd be
a great criteria for bar related jobs.
Not legal. You can't do that.
True.
So to allow an adolescent or a teenager who's under my care, who God has said, it is your job to steward this creature, this human being, to allow them, at least while they're dependent on me, to be presented with oftentimes insurmountable temptation.
Yeah.
Not
Especially
only seems
in a stage of life where
that's the whole point.
Yeah.
That's the whole point, is that stage of life.
Yeah.
The hormones are real. And we joke about, much like we do with the word love, we talk about it so nonchalantly. Oh, they're so hormonal or blah blah blah. Like we've diluted the importance of acknowledging the power of hormones. They are so powerful. And
I think it's also something to be said for, we say, oh, it's just hormones, but also, what the heck are the hormones doing? And then it's like, I don't know. And it's like,
They're saying I'm fertile and I'm ready to have a baby.
True.
Is what they're saying.
Yeah.
Male and female.
Yeah.
And
my point was
Yeah.
more so like we sort of know what they're doing, but at the same time, the depth of our knowledge of what they are and what they're doing simply on a more like, what would you say, casual basis.
Oh yeah.
In the more lay person, it's so surface level, and it's like, oh, I've heard of hormones, but I don't necessarily know what they do.
Right.
And it's like, okay, that's definitely a bit of an issue.
Yeah.
And
even the neurological piece too, like,
oh my gosh, yeah.
How hormones, first of all, how and where they are created, is your body functioning properly? Because I struggled with infertility.
Do you have the right hormone balance
right.
and everything? Yeah.
Totally. And not having a fully developed prefrontal cortex. Again, all of these things.
I'm getting there, guys. I'm getting there.
Yeah, you're not there yet. You got a few more years. And in the conversations that I'm having with my 12-year-old around her body and her mind and how she's so down on herself when she's so emotional. And I'm like, this is why we keep track of things on the calendar. So that you're not as a female, there is a cycle. We are cycling hormones literally every month.
Which is so crazy that it's legitimately every month.
It's a cycle. Yes.
It's crazy.
There's an ebb and flow, and it's real. And it's again, it's not how many people stewarding their children are talking about these natural rhythms of the human experience.
Yeah.
Life is utterly overwhelming for the adolescent already. To not have base knowledge of like what's around the corner. So you have a birthday party coming up. Let's look at the calendar.
Yeah.
Right?
How are we going to be doing that?
Right. Like these, so that so it doesn't make that morning argument or that morning intensity such a mystery when you just glance at the calendar. And this is not to excuse, you don't have permission to have bad behavior. I want to say somebody's going to check me on this, but like women in crime, it's typically around their cycle.
Makes sense.
When there's violent crime enacted by a female, it correlates to their menstrual cycle.
That doesn't surprise me whatsoever.
So, and now, thank you, God, we have PMDD in the DSM. I'm so grateful for that.
What's that?
It's basically it's premenstrual dysphoria.
Huh.
And it's extreme, and it stops the second you start bleeding. So, and that's one of the ways we know we can actually diagnose it. We can actually say it's PMDD. Huh. But it's like an utter. I know I experienced this, but it wasn't, and it doesn't matter because now I know what it is and whatever. But it's just like, what would my world, going back to the conversation around diagnosis and like the whole relief of like, oh, I'm not insane, this actually is nice. Real, just to have conversations with the adolescent and the teenager to say, you are healthy. These emotions are healthy.
Yeah.
You don't have to be ashamed of them. You don't have to be freaking out that you're, losing your mind. This is part or that you're different.
Yeah.
Or that you have to do drugs to mitigate these big emotions. Yeah. Like, this is just who you are. Okay. Now, dating and courting, right? This is all. So early days having conversations. Go ahead. You have a question?
Yeah. Well, it wasn't necessarily a question, but it was more so just bringing up the whole, it's not even I guess it is a drug, but the introduction of our society to the pill that and all of its major fallouts of that drug and what it does to the female body, hormones, all that.
Yep.
And that it there were because doesn't it delay it tells your body that you're like on your period.
It bypasses the sloughing off of, I think we need a producer. You need a producer? Like I'm channeling like Joe Rogan and like and Ruben, the Ruben Report, where they like in real time they can fact check.
Yeah.
I want to say that because I was on it for a while, and not knowing I was completely infertile, which is so laughable. But it's you skip your cycle, you skip your period. So that makes me think, okay, well, it probably convinces your body that you don't need to slough off the unused egg. So I don't know how that works. But also something else I didn't know about my own body, and that I only learned when in the infertility season, was that each cycle your fallopian tubes, you only use. No, you only use one ovary every other cycle. So one cycle you use an egg from your right ovary, the next cycle your left ovary, the next cycle your right ovary.
Huh.
Yeah. I was like, okay, and this is my body. I had no idea. There's so many things my body didn't know about. Anyway,
that's actually kind of cool.
It is kind of cool.
You're like walking a little funny on the left.
Yeah.
Next month you're walking around.
Well,
the
think
right.
about it from this. I'm totally gonna explode your man brain. So,
good.
So when you start dating women again, I guess when you get back into the swing of things, the cramping can happen on the right side and not on the left side. The next month's on the left side. But if they have something like polycystic ovarian syndrome or
that's a word and a half,
or endometriosis, that there could be scar tissue building up on one side, and it would be excruciating on both sides. So I'm ovulating on this side, but this side is like basically like inhibited through scar tissue. They can be cramping on both sides.
Huh.
So it's messy. The female reproductive system is a mess.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Anyway, all of that is to say, and then that can totally jack up hormones, and then you go back into the whole like depression thing. And so at least for my human, I will say this, that I'm differentiating courting from dating in this way. Dating is nonchalant. Dating is shopping. Dating is, I'm going to try on this dress with these shoes. I don't like it. I'm going to put it back on the shelf. I am going to grab this marinara and take it home. And I'm going to enjoy this marinara. But you know what? I think I'm going to try this other marinara instead. Like this, I'm going to go with the garlic basil. And on this one, I'm just going to go with the tomato basil. Like, it's like, so...
Well,
as opposed to saying
she knows she wants some marinara, just what flavor?
Right. So that's the problem. It's like, and then as my husband said, like the 31 flavors season, right? It's like, how much damage can you do to yourself? And then I don't know if this is new research or if it's just like been recycled, but the more partners an individual has, the harder it is for them to actually bond with one.
That makes sense.
So,
that comes.
I think there. I don't know if it's recently been re-studied or if old research has been resurrected.
And do you know if
that's straight up biblical?
Oh yeah, but do you know if that's in terms of sexual partners?
Yes,
or
sexual partners.
Oh, okay,
sexual partners.
But is that still the case for non-sexual partners?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so, I mean, I don't think that was in the research. Okay. I don't know if it's not necessarily the case.
Yeah, because that research has also got to be so niche of like, it's pretty easy to figure that one out because people know like.
That was straight sex.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And people typically know how many.
I should say intercourse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fair. Jeez. That's a whole other conversation.
Right.
But I mean, nowadays it's like if you date someone, you typically
will have sex with them. Yeah.
But
it's assumed.
Yeah. But then to try and find couples that dated people but didn't actually have sex, but also actually didn't have sex.
Yeah.
As opposed to
these days anyway.
They didn't have sex, but they did have some variation of.
And maybe that's my bone to pick. Maybe that's my beef with dating, because if we go back to the 50s, and maybe this is my own like generational ignorance, but I think people dated in classier ways. And so maybe now, maybe that's where I'm projecting my twisted assumptions around dating, is that I feel like to protect my daughter from dating is to protect her from premarital sex, because which is a thing that is more of a phenomenon now than was, 50, 60, even 70 years ago, where it didn't happen. Like I mean, and that's a huge leap and a overgeneralization fallacy. But I feel like people understood, they had better boundaries. There was more of a proclivity toward family and who do I want to who do I want to be towards this man? Who do I want to be towards this woman? I will eventually have children I'm going to have to face at some point. Yes, your reputation meant more.
For marriage.
100%. So then going back to, in 2024, my human technically could start dating anywhere between now at 12 to...
Which is so wild.
Well, I mean, they're getting pregnant at 12 and earlier. So 12...
That's also history as well. Like, at least, I mean, as soon as someone has their period or
they're fertile.
Yeah.
You can make a baby.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, throughout history, it's like, as soon as you're fertile, now's the time you get married. And it's like, hold up. Let's have some life experience first. But I mean, that was those times.
I was listening to a podcast yesterday, because that's what I do with my life.
Yeah.
About
it's a wonder we're friends.
The woman that was talking used to be a Planned Parenthood. She was a Planned Parenthood trained sex talk professional. So she was the one who would go into the high schools.
Wow.
But she converted to Christianity and her life changed, and it was just a really beautiful testimony. But she said, the Planned Parenthood that was training her and Planned Parenthood in general, but talking about 9-year-olds coming in for abortions. And
that's crazy.
And the woman who was talking said, this is when she was being trained. Her first instinct was like, oh my gosh, there's no such thing as a consenting 9-year-old. So these 9-year-olds are obviously being abused. And that's what she shared with the trainer. And the trainer was like, no, honey, we're not going to train them to not have sex. We're going to train them how to have sex safely. And so, which brings us back to, again, courting
but also,
and dating.
How the heck do you have sex safely?
Well,
and what is correct?
There's no way a 9-year-old's consenting. Like, let's start there.
Yeah.
And so
because they have no idea what the heck is actually happening.
But that's the messaging, and that's why we have. I mean, when I was younger for my grade, so 12, 11, 10. So that would have been 6th grade. I would have been 9. I want to say in the 6th grade. Is that right? I was young, so I was 12 my 8th grade year. Anyway, the point is there's no such thing as consenting at 9. And so when I started thinking about courting and dating and the differences between that, I was shocked to realize that my parents let me date. I had a full-on boyfriend. Like in my day, we called it going together. So I was going with this young man who's a good guy. I never dated a bad guy. He was a good guy, but there was a ton of temptation, and I was in 8th grade. So like I said, I was young. I was 12, and to put that kind of pressure, and I'm not faulting my parents. I love them very much. They are good people, but I don't think they were thinking, they trusted me.
Yeah.
I think this is what came up. This is what I shared, is that in our previous conversation, is that my parents trusted me, and they should have trusted me. I was a good kid. They had every reason to trust me, I should say. Not that they should have trusted me, but they had every reason to trust me.
Fair enough.
Got good grades, very respectful, very responsible kid, and loved
Until
Jesus,
high school.
Right? What was that?
Until high school.
Right. Oh gosh, we're not going to say on that on podcast. But that, in conjunction with this idea of now I'm raising a 12-year-old of my own, like there's no way I would ever allow her in a million years to casually date. So what is courting? Courting is very intentional. Courting is me sitting down and having a conversation with the young man's parents, me having a chance to get to know the young man's parents and his family. They're having a chance to get to know me and my family and all my warts and scars and bruises.
Yeah.
And then making a decision, do we want to allow our children to have a mind towards marriage right now?
Yeah.
And if we are all in agreement, the young man, my daughter, and this other family. If we are all in agreement that we are going to support our children in having a mind toward marriage, then the courting can begin. And the courting will look like having an escort when they are together. Oh, Moreland, what are you doing? Yeah. And not to spy, but to have a physical representation of an acknowledgement that God is with you and that you have a higher calling to posterity for the next generation, that is the weight on your shoulders as you move forward in this relationship. And I don't know any 12-year-old who's ready for that.
Yeah.
I don't know any 16-year-old that's ready for that. 18-year-old, 20-year-old, or 22-year-old at this point. Maybe there's some 22-year-olds who are willing to have a sit-down conversation around posterity and the next generation and sexual responsibility with all parents in the same room. I mean, think about the level of awkwardness.
Oh, yeah.
But that takes a very specific level of maturity and intention.
I think there's a lot of parents that aren't ready for that.
Preach. So that's where that's the place where I've landed. So let's stay there for a second. So if I'm going to allow my kid to be courted by this dude and their parents aren't able to have that conversation with all of us in the room, that's a no for me.
Yeah, that's
because that's indicative of future conflict resolution. If you can't,
streamlined down to the kid.
That's the kid, right, and their children.
Yes.
So if you don't have the ability to experience distress tolerance even to that level, which to me, and again, I got to give some people some grace because this is what I do for a living.
Yeah.
And I'm fully aware of that.
And there are few kids that have broken away from their parents in that manner, in like that they're more mature in the sense that they're able to have those conversations and they would be more capable in that way and their parents wouldn't. And so in that case, then it might be a certain exception.
Yeah.
But that's very, very unlikely.
Well, and think of it this way though. If I'm gonna have a conversation with folks like that and they're down, they're like, yeah, well, let's sit down at the table, let's do this, right?
Yeah.
Those are my people.
Oh yeah.
And if those are my people, then those by default are likely going to be my kids' people.
Yeah.
And if those are my kids' people, then that means this homeboy that she's trying to hook up with in the marital, like in a courting sense, not hook up in the 2024 dating sense. I should watch my language.
I've definitely said that in like
not meaning it to what it.
No, yeah.
And
be like, yeah, she hooked me up with that, and I'm like, that sounded really wrong.
I didn't mean it that way. Yeah,
we're not doing that. It was like we hung out and we met.
That's right.
It's fine.
We're friends. It's good. Think about the potential outcome for longevity of relationship. We are in and of ourselves in that moment, in that experience, becoming a village.
Yeah.
So dating is not that. Dating is far more,
especially in this modern sense, for sure.
Where's the responsibility? Where's the accountability? Where are the perceived outcomes? Where is the willingness to experience distress tolerance? Where is the willingness to have hard conversations? Where is the ability and capacity to hold space to have awkward, uncomfortable conversations in general, so that when they inevitably show up between in-laws or in the marriage experience or with the children you're raising, you have trained yourself to do those hard things in relationship.
Yeah.
Which brings me to relationship. So to have a relationship with another person, to have an intimate relationship, and I don't know if we've talked about this or not, is
I don't think we have actually somehow
is to develop and manifest intimacy.
Yeah.
And to develop and when I say intimacy, before you can have good, authentic sexual intimacy, you have to have good, authentic relationship or relational intimacy. Yeah. And the way I define that for my clients is when you present things, vulnerability, essentially, and it's not weaponized against you. So when you, which is the container of my coaching space. So when you are coming in to get coaching, however we're defining coaching client to client,
I do want to talk to you eventually about that, of like, how do you define coaching with each client, and like, how do you switch your mindset? Because inevitably each client has a different style and different need and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And so like switching your mindset of like, okay, I'm not with Ethan, I'm with this person,
right.
and I'm not with this person, I'm with this person.
Right.
And so switching that up, I can imagine is definitely difficult to...
Yeah, my coaching style in a nutshell, I bring my personality to the table, and each individual who comes in, it's at the gate, the non-clinical discussion is presented so that it's basically a needs by needs relationship. You're coming to me for grief, you're coming to me for mentorship, you're coming to me because you're trying to sort this thing out with your dad. You're coming to me because whatever. It's like every individual literally just needs an objective conversationalist.
Yeah.
And I happen to have some education and some lived experience. And that's what I'm literally offering them, is my education and lived experience. I'm not offering them clinical interventions. I'm not offering them any type of, clinical psychotherapy. So they know that at the gate, and a whole lot of Jesus. And a whole lot of like, don't take my word for it. Let's pray on this together.
Yeah.
Here's what I want you praying about. Like, so, I mean, it's life. It's Christian life coaching, right? It's not, I'm a Christian and I'm offering you some life coaching.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's in a nutshell. So
dating and courting relationships.
No, intimacy now.
Oh, right.
So how do we get a relationship? So I go back to like, okay, so what is the difference between the closeness I feel with so-and-so and the closeness I felt with Jeff, as an example? And the closeness or even with my child, the closeness I felt with Jeff was almost, Ethan, I'm going to cry. If you make me cry again, I swear I'm going to be so angry. And when we talk about Jeff, I start to cry. I felt immediately close to that man. Immediately. Like, I felt immediate safety. I cannot explain it other than to say that it felt like he could handle my vulnerability without ever needing to weaponize it. Now that was a 4-season experiment. So that's how it felt at the gate. But because I didn't know I was anxious, I had anxious avoidant attachment wounding, but I learned it posthumously. So after he died, I learned, that's why I was so nutso. But he was there for it.
Yeah.
He was like, okay, little baby rattlesnake, I got you. I'll figure this out, And so because of that, because I trusted that
little baby rattlesnake.
That was me.
That's so perfect.
I was little baby rattlesnake.
But
he wasn't scared. He wasn't scared of that rattlesnake.
He wearing steel-toed boots. That's
for sure. He was not afraid. He was excited. Like he told me later. He's like, "You excited me." He's like, "I never had anybody like you. You were so different." And I was like, that's probably what. And what was different was, I'm just gonna say it. I think what was different was that my parents had raised me to be really, even though I was agreeable, to be non-agreeable. And by raised me, I think the outcome being anxious avoidant attachment, I wasn't all in on him. I was like, you're going to have to prove, you're saying words, but I've been so hurt from dating and not courting. So I was the wife to a lot of boyfriends.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah.
And I was so wounded by that, plus all my attachment wounding. So my dating experience fortified my unconscious attachment wounding drama.
This concludes part 3 of my episode with Dr. Sarah Moreland. In the next part, we will discuss some of her hilariously accurate nicknames, the effect of premarital sex, some of her relationship experience, and a true culmination. Hope you will join us.